Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. I'm Susie.
And I'm Michael, and we're excited you joined us for this adventure. So today's guest is a good friend of mine, an old friend, Kyle Southard. So Kyle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I look up to you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, we're excited. Kyle has a really cool story. So be sure you listen all the way through the end, and he's going to share the amazing things he's doing. He's leveraging real estate to make an impact on the city that he invests in. So just before we begin, though, I'm going to talk a little bit how Kyle and I met. Actually, Kyle is a classmate of mine from the Air Force Academy, and it's really cool. Like we actually not only did we get to spend 3 years together in the same squadron, just for our listeners out there, the Air Force Academy, when we were going through the academy, it was 1 year as a freshman in one squadron, and then the 3 additional years, so your sophomore through senior year, you spend in another squadron, just so you shuffle it up after the really terrible first year, or whatever you want to call it. But, so there's no hard feelings against the upperclassmen, yeah. But that's how it was when Kyle and I were there, and Kyle and I were lucky to be placed in the same squadron together, Squadron 28, and then we graduated.
Badass Blackbirds.
That's right. Yep. And not only do we get to spend the academic year together, just living down the hall from each other, but we also got to be roommates for one summer. So that was a lot.
Right. That's right. Basic training cadre. I remember it like it was yesterday, Mike.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I didn't particularly enjoy, yelling or being firm with cadets, but or the we want to call them cadet candidates. But yeah.
Right. And it's funny because if we had been interested in real estate at that time, Mike, we could have had some great conversations. But at the time, I think we were focused on getting up to Boulder and, partying when we could. So, come full circle, though. Now we're talking about real estate, which is a lot more fun than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of add on to the Kyle and I's relationship, he actually, when I was teaching at the academy, 2017-18-ish timeframe, Kyle was also there. I was teaching in the bio department. Kyle was teaching in the foreign language department. He was teaching German. So that was really cool. And then we were able to reconnect there. And then just shortly after that, been posting on social media, again, making sure you get out there and post what you're doing and everybody will see it. And Kyle was also doing real estate investing. So we reconnected again a couple of years later. But this time about real estate. So it's really cool to see that, Kyle's growth. Since then, I think I know he's left the Air Force to focus on real estate full time, but I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. So Kyle, with that, would you mind, sharing with our listeners a little bit more about your background and like why you started investing in real estate?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. I started with just the desire to get out of the rat race. I read a book that I'm sure y'all have heard of. And if you haven't, you got to get it. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, written by Robert Kiyosaki. So before reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I really had no idea what it was like to have something of an investment portfolio that did not include numbers on a page, but instead an actual piece of property. And so I learned about the tax advantages of real estate investing and how you could really leverage yourself and your finances and make good on all of that. And I thought, I want to try this for myself. And so when I started my teaching career at the Air Force Academy, I knew that Colorado was a great place to live. And so I bought a house. And whether you have a VA loan eligibility or not, in the United States of America, we have the capability to buy a single family home or even up to a fourplex using very little money out of pocket. And so truly, I had very little money in my savings account and nonetheless was able to purchase a house for $260,000 at 3.75% interest, amortized over 30 years. And within about a year of owning that house, I got a note from my realtor and my lender almost within a week of each other saying, hey, your house has probably appreciated a lot in value. The market's really hot. And I said, well, how much? And they said, you could probably get it appraised for over $300,000. And my mind just exploded. I said, oh my goodness, I can go from having $260,000 being owed to refinancing. And that's what I did. So I refinanced at $315,000 is what that house appraised for. So we can do the math. I ended up having about $50,000 or $60,000 cash. And I got a better interest rate down to 3.25%. So what ended up happening is my monthly payment was pretty much identical, but now I had about $50,000 to play with to invest in another property. And so that's exactly what my wife and I did. We bought 2 rental properties. One of those was in Colorado Springs, and the other was in another city called Shreveport, Louisiana, which we can talk about later. But that was my first real taste of, wow, real estate's really cool. And it's not always going to be that easy or that fun, but I was very fortunate in that aspect. And so at that point, we had 3 houses in our portfolio. And a year later, the rental house that we bought in Colorado Springs appreciated again. And this time it went from being what we paid for 280, it actually sold for $400,000 a year later, right? And it was just from fixing stuff up and building a fence around the house and making it look a little nicer, changing the paint color. And again, it's not always going to be that easy. I feel like I was very lucky in a lot of aspects in a hot market. But again, it was a beautiful thing where if I had put that money in the stock market and it appreciated that much, I'd probably be paying anywhere from 20 to 40% tax on that, right? But with real estate, that's not necessary. There's so many ways that you can get around that legally. So then I bought another house using the proceeds of that sale, and it was bigger and better and drawing more cash flow. And so I just thought, this is an amazing thing, this real estate world. And I want to share it with everyone I know, because I don't think it gets the respect that it deserves as an investment vehicle. And so now I'm shouting it from the mountaintops that everyone should buy a house and do good stuff to it and build up your community. And one of the things I noticed in my process of doing that is that when you get the community involved, you can really change neighborhoods and change cities for the better. And so, one of the things that we did for our houses in this particular neighborhood of Colorado Springs is, we made the house nice, but we also wanted to make the neighborhood a better place to live. And so I started up the neighborhood watch group. And
yay!
right, all of the neighbors got to know each other for the first time, and we started, keeping tabs on each other's property when we were out of town. And you learn about, Rick down the street. He became known as the sheriff because he didn't put up with any nonsense on the street, right? And so next thing you know, instead of having transient, people walking through your neighborhood, you've got a vibrant community of people who know each other. And it's not something that you can put on paper, but you feel it, right? If you're looking to rent a house somewhere or you're looking to buy a house somewhere, you feel that good vibe, right? And that goes a long way in real estate. And that's another thing I love about real estate investing versus any other investment vehicle, guys. It's like you can really make an impact on not only the house you live in, but the community you live in. And you can't do that with a piece of paper that says, I own 1/quintillionth of Apple stock. And so I'm really big on that. Nothing against that, but that's when I became just so enamored with this idea of not only investing in real estate, but also developing communities. And I think that honestly, if you're doing it right, it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that statement, Kyle. And that's amazing. I didn't know all that about the house in Colorado there. And you starting the neighborhood watch and everything like that. So that's really cool. And what's even cooler is like you've taken that idea of building communities, and now what you're doing is rebuilding, downtown Shreveport, Louisiana, basically, one building at a time, which was really, really cool. And
Absolutely.
When you shared that story with me, and we'll have you share it here in a minute, but it was just so powerful. And when I heard it, Kyle, I was like, we need to share this on our podcast, because this is what our podcast is about, right? Like making an impact, leveraging real estate to make an impact in your community, in your family, and your friends, like everything, right? So Kyle, would you mind sharing with our audience, our adventurous family, like that story you share with me about like purchasing that property in downtown Shreveport, and then like the whole process that went around it as well?
So before you do that, though, because I saw your mouth moving, can you explain how you even chose the market? Because I think that's a big part of it too.
Absolutely. So when I was with the Air Force still, I was stationed at Barksdale Air Force Base, home of the Mighty Deuce. And when I got to Barksdale, it had a really almost a negative reputation in the military community. They would say, you'll never escape from Barcatraz. So So I went into Barksdale with no idea of what the state of Louisiana was, even the difference between, Shreveport and Baton Rouge or New Orleans. And so I just thought it was all the same, and it had this really negative reputation. Well, after about a year of hanging out on Barksdale, I finally got off base and I explored Shreveport, and I started to meet some of the people in Shreveport, and I started to realize there's a really great subculture in Shreveport, Louisiana, of young professionals and professionals in general who are trying to live a great life for themselves, and they are finding it and building it. But it was still a very small part of the culture in Shreveport. And, I started to hang out with the people that believed in Shreveport and wanted to make it a better place, but also a place that is reflective of its very, very rich culture and heritage here. So after spending 3 or 4 years at Barksdale with a deployment in there somewhere, I left Colorado I left Louisiana, and I really missed it. I missed my friends back there. I had met an amazing girl there who's now my wife, and we always just reminisced about Shreveport and how magical it is, and even more magical that it can be. So for me, I had a very emotional connection, but that was coupled with the realization that living in Colorado, I guess now in 2021, you really can't find a house for less than $350,000, whereas in the city of Shreveport, you can find the house of your dreams for less than that. And so I saw this opportunity of very affordable cost of living, lots of bang for your buck. And I thought there's something to this with the quarantine, where people were in New York City and Houston and New Orleans and San Francisco and paying a lot of money for a house that they might not have actually loved, whether renting or living in a house that they owned. And I thought, wow, there could be a market for Shreveport with remote work becoming more and more of a thing, to where people live in Shreveport and work anywhere, right? And so I'm hitching my wagon to the city of Shreveport because I love it. It's extremely magical in a very cultural and historic sense, but it's also very affordable, and it's just practical for a lot of young professionals like myself to really make a difference. And when I moved back to Shreveport, I had no idea really what I was going to do. And I just knew that I loved real estate and I wanted to share my real estate love with other people. And so I became a real estate agent, and I started to get the inside scoop by talking with other realtors about what was going on in the market. And one of those buildings is a building in downtown Shreveport called the Sanger Drug Building. And it's called that because the very first building on the street that we bought on was a pharmacy. And it was a couple of brothers, Abe and Julian Sanger, and they were pharmacists. They started the very first 24/7 pharmacy in the Southeast, and it was the very third 24/7 pharmacy in the United States. Wow. And so they were already kind of visionaries, and they eventually went on to build over 100 theaters. So they got into the entertainment industry. And so now you'll hear about the Sanger Theater in New Orleans and the Sanger Theater in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and all these really great cities that still have a Sanger Theater. Well, the very first building they ever had was their pharmacy on the bottom, and they had a hotel boarding house on top. And so I looked at this and thought that this could be an amazing opportunity to have something really cool on the bottom still, and something really cool on top, like for what I'm thinking, it's short-term rentals. And so in the process of planning that, purchasing the building and talking with architects and talking with general contractors, I also learned that just like in Colorado Springs, I had to talk to people in the community to find out what is really going on here. And so that is where I started to realize, again, it was reaffirmed for me that real estate investing, real estate developing is really community investing and community developing. And if you don't understand the community, you're putting yourself disproportionately at risk. And so I love meeting the people that are making things move and shake in downtown Shreveport and all over the city of Shreveport. And that's become kind of my rallying cry by living here in Shreveport. I want to know everything about it downtown.
That's cool. Yeah. Just to highlight the point you just made, right? Like, if you invest in a community that you don't understand, you put yourself at risk, right? So a lot of these, if you're talking about multifamily operators, a lot of them will just pop around to various different places all over the United States, looking at deals in Texas, in Oregon, in North Dakota, in Florida, right? Like they're looking at deals all over and they don't really fully understand the communities there, right? They're like, oh, they see rents that they could be increased and things like that. They don't take the residents in consideration, right? Or the community in consideration, right? So like something that Susie and I have been very keen on doing is like, we've focused and dialed in on like Tulsa and Oklahoma City, right? Like, and we've spent a lot of time like really understanding what those communities want and what they need, and understanding the residents there, the people, the working class that we serve, and like what they actually need. And then we develop our business plans for our multifamily properties around those communities. And it's very similar to what you do as well, right? And it's just incredible. So
absolutely. And when you mentioned that, it reminds me that there are a lot of national level investors, whether it's a company or an individual. And one example that I experienced when I was under contract with this building, there was an investor. I don't know who it was, but I hear he or she or they were from New York City. And they offered me and my business partner in this deal $30,000 just to walk away from the deal and not go through with it. And it was a relatively inexpensive building, and so to make a quick dollar on that 30 grand and let some other investor have this building for whatever reason, it's very tempting. But at the same time, I realized that's not what we're developing this building for. It's not about the quick buck. It's about the long term and the community development. So the thing I want to point out about this building is it's in an opportunity zone, and it's also eligible for historic tax credits. So it's the double whammy. And that's what a lot of downtown Shreveport is, which is another factor in my belief that Shreveport will rise again. And I think that when people realize what an opportunity zone really is and what historic tax credits really can do, it's extremely attractive. And so anybody can do this, guys. Like, I'm not coming in here with $1 million to just, risk. This is something that can be done with very creative financing. And I think that anyone can do it if they really believe in a vision and have one and can communicate it effectively, which is something that I'm still working on.
Would you mind just elaborating a little bit about like opportunity zones, just for our listeners out there who don't really understand what they might be, and the historic tax credit as well?
Absolutely. So correct me where I'm wrong, and y'all do your own research on this. Don't hold me responsible if I misspeak, but the way I've understood it thus far is that an opportunity zone is something that is pretty new in the grand scheme of real estate investing. And what it is it's an area of a city that has been identified as needing a little bit of development, whether that's downtown or not. And it's identified by the local government, but it's essentially honored by the federal government. And what that is like, if you have, let's say, $100,000 in capital gains, whether it's in the stock market or anywhere else, you can defer the capital gains taxation by putting that $100,000 into an opportunity zone. And if you hold that money, or you hold that investment in that opportunity zone for 10 years, then when you sell it, you don't pay any tax on the appreciation of that building. And also the capital gains recapture, is advantageous because there's some mathematics to do, but you don't end up paying all of the capital gains tax that you were supposed to pay when you realize that capital gain 10 years prior to the sale. And so, there are timelines to be met with this, and it is a little bit more complicated than I'm making it sound, but a lot of investors have found it very lucrative to defer capital gains for a certain period of time, and then also try to develop a piece of land or real estate in a downtown area in the process of that. So, or not even in downtown, I'm sorry, opportunity zone area. And so then there's another side of this coin. It's not always going to happen that you have an opportunity zone investment and historic tax credits in the same property. But in a lot of cases, you can get that. And so what that is you've got an historic building, whether it's on the National Historic Register or not, there are criteria that need to be met. But if your building does qualify for historic tax credits, then any qualified rehabilitative expenditures that you have to spend on this development go into a pot of money, and then you get about 40% of that money back through tax credits that can be monetized, transferred to somebody who can use them, or if you can use them yourself. So essentially what that is if you pour $1 million into a development, you can get up to $400,000 back. And so a lot of people are doing that these days because why would you not? I mean, it's like 40% off on development that already has tax benefits in the first place. And so with a really good team of CPAs or accountants, you can do a world of hurt in this historic tax credit opportunity zone area of real estate investing. And so I could talk anyone's ear off about this. It's the coolest thing to happen since sliced bread, in my opinion. And again, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I promise you. It's so fun to talk about and research as well.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that, Kyle. So where are you at in the process right now with this building? Like it closed and what's your plans for the development? And then what's your future plans for downtown as well?
Yes. So we closed back in, I want to say late June of this year. Mm-hmm. And since then, we've been really beating the streets to find out who's who and what's what in downtown Shreveport, because I'm a believer that you have to find out what the market is demanding before you can give the market what you think it needs. And so we have been talking with community leaders from the Office of the Mayor to economic development to, the nonprofits that are around town. And then also some of the other people that are investing downtown as well. And what I found is that Shreveport is extremely collaborative. It's not cutthroat the way I kind of expected the game of real estate investing to be. Here in Shreveport, I think that we believe that everybody benefits from everyone else's successes. And so we're more than happy to talk to people, and people are more than happy to talk to us about how they have succeeded and failed. And we're doing the same. And so in the process of doing that, we have decided to make it into a short-term rental. There's some politics to overcome there, of course. There was an ordinance that was passed back in July that says, the short-term rentals in Shreveport are going to be a lot more regulated than they have in the past. It scares us. And so we had to, again, talk with city council and find out about, what that looks like in the future. Yeah. We believe that Shreveport is so vacant right now in the downtown area that if we can get short-term rentals, just 6 or 7 in our building, then that's going to provide a lot of opportunity to build more of a market downtown. And so one thing about Shreveport is there are a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses, a lot of medical schools here, a lot of people that are in residence that are here for maybe 6 months or a couple of years, mm-hmm. and they're looking for a cool place to hang out. And we think that if we can get a lot of that traffic downtown, then it'll be really good. So we're shooting for short-term rentals on the top 2 floors of this cool building. It's a 3.5-story building. So the top 2 floors, short-term rentals, and then the first floor and a half, which includes a mezzanine. So ground floor and then mezzanine. We're hoping to do something cool, like a wine bar or something that's a play off of the original pharmacy that was there. Now, what we're running into is the finances, because it doesn't matter what kind of cool idea you have if the numbers don't work. And so we have started talking with architects and builders to find out, hey, so how much is this going to cost? And in the process of doing that, we've realized that, you really have to vet your idea through a number of filters in order to really get an idea of what you're doing and whether or not you can be successful. So I would say we're about a month or 2 away from really making that go or no-go decision based on the numbers that we come up with from the estimates that we have from our consultants, architects, et cetera. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And we're hoping it's a go, but at the same time, it has to make sense for the finances. So that's kind of where we're at in that. So in a month or 2, I hope to be able to provide an update and let y'all know how it's going and have you guys come out and stay in the short-term rental in maybe a year or so. We'll see. So.
Yeah. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. And I like that you even said, you have to vet the ideas, because that's hard for a lot of people to do. A lot of people will just go in with ideas and think that they'll work. There is no vetting, even with your business plan with resident amenities, not a lot of residents need this new fancy apartment home or even a dog park, right? If the whole community doesn't have a laundry facility, would that benefit them more? And what we do actually is we send out a survey after we close. just because like we want to know what they would prefer. But then there's also enough in our business plan itself, like with the contingency that if we need to change it because something that they thought they wanted, it's actually not going to be like that big of a hit, then that's what we'll have to do. But so many people go in with like this ego, like, oh no, like my way is the only way, but that's not it. It's like, your idea is great. And so is somebody else's idea. Just like one works better at the time. Yours can work one day, maybe just not right now. And so it's like, even beyond yourself to understand, because like once you're no longer thinking about yourself, like your vision gets bigger and stronger. And so then you receive feedback better because it's no longer about you. It's about everyone else. And that's the most important part.
Absolutely. And what you're getting at is the highest and best use for a property, because I see it a lot. Someone has a great idea, just like we all do, right? And the thing we have to understand is like, is it going to work? And I don't just mean like, is it a cool enough idea that it'll work? Like, is it financially sound? Is it politically sound? Is it, community conscious sound? And so we see that a lot. Someone will have a really great idea and it sounds really, really cool. But then you have to ask yourself, like you mentioned the dog park example, like, are there enough people in this area to use a dog park? Is this the highest and best use for this plot of land? And maybe it is, right? But there's a lot of vetting that has to go into that decision first.
Well, and even like it depends on your area too. Like, is this dog park going to turn into a giant poop pile?
Exactly.
Like, because then that defeats the purpose as well.
Absolutely. Yes. And what are the dogs going to be well behaved or not? Right. And that's another thing to consider. And is it going to be loud or not? And so that all of these things, that we're just scratching the surface. And so you really have to look at an idea 360 degrees. I know you guys do that because I've talked with you guys about what y'all are doing in your investments. And I think it's extremely valuable to you as well as your investors if you have some investors as a syndicator. And so it's awesome that we're having that talk because I think it's vital to the success of a real estate project.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that, Kyle. Yeah. So what's next, Kyle? What are you guys focusing on now?
So thanks for asking, man. We have realized that there is enough excitement that you can generate about downtown development that you can find other people just like us that can get excited about an idea and a project and start to thoroughly vet that idea and that project. And so I'm working right now as a real estate agent with some potential investors in the downtown area, because once we can explain to them what exactly an opportunity zone plus a historic building can do for you and for the community, everyone wants a piece of that. And so I think that it's something that is hopefully going to catch on in downtown Shreveport. And we're hoping for a new renaissance in downtown Shreveport, not just with me and my friends and family and business partner, but also other people that are going to become friends and family and business partners down the road, because we're all in this together. And so we really want to see that happen in downtown Shreveport. And hey, if it can happen in downtown Shreveport, it can happen anywhere in the United States, right? And so it's just an exciting challenge to be taking on at this stage in my career. And I think that a lot of people feel the same way. So. Yeah,
that's awesome. I'm really excited to see how it all plays out.
Me too.
Kyle, and I'm glad that we've reconnected on real estate.
Thank you. Yeah.
We'll stay connected for sure.
Well, and y'all come on out too. I want to point out one of the things we look at as a model is Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's a city, and Jackson, Mississippi as well. And so it's a city that was relatively empty in its downtown areas, and then they started developing in their historic districts. And apparently Chattanooga is popping right now. It's really great to be at. And so what I did is I went to a conference and I met a guy from Chattanooga. He happened to be in charge of the historic district board. Wow. And, just started keeping in touch with him. And I was like, hey, dude, did you experience this when you were developing downtown Chattanooga? And he says yes or no. And we talk about it. And so that's what's beautiful, guys, about the resources we have at our disposal these days. Just like we're talking together right now and reconnecting, we can do that with anyone, anywhere, at any time. And it's just so exciting that we're at a time in the world history where we can do this kind of a thing. So,
and I want to point out too, just because I think this is underneath the surface, but not really talked about. So like he or this individual theoretically like could be a mentor to you, and he might not know it, and you like however you want to look at it, right? But so many people think like, oh, I need to ask someone to mentor me, but that's not what you need to do. It's just having like those natural organic conversations, because when a relationship grows, like that's when you'll get the fullest out of it, not when you immediately go into it making it transactional. But that's all it was. It was just a conversation, and like you came back curious, and he was like, well, this is cool. You know, if he's going to be engaged, why shouldn't I? And I just, it's huge. It's just huge because you didn't have to like go out of your way or anything. It just happened naturally.
Yes. And the beautiful thing about that is there is mutual benefit. Like you mentioned transactional relationships. And I think in the real estate game, it's very rare that you're going to have that, because I would benefit from helping anyone for anything. And so of course I'm going to do it, whether their success equals my success, or I just learned something about myself or my portfolio or my strategy by talking with someone else about theirs. And so it would be very rare, I think, that anyone would ask me for insight or advice or help, and I would say no. And I think it's the same with anyone in the real estate game. It's such a wonderful space to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one thing I wanted to bring up that you mentioned earlier was like how collaborative real estate investing is. And it's not very cutthroat. You know, you were talking about people investing in downtown Shreveport. I think that's pretty much everywhere in real estate that I know of. I mean, there could be some cutthroat people, I'm sure, as there always is, like some bad eggs and stuff like that. But for the most part, you know, in real estate investing, a rising tide raises all boats, right? And so that's why it's so, you know, it's much more, if you look at, you know, Wall Street versus real estate, you know, it's just completely different mentality, completely different mindset, and everybody's out to help each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The scarcity mentality is something that doesn't exist as much in the real estate world as other worlds, is what I found. And what I mean by that is, you know, if I have a great idea, when I first entered real estate, I thought my great idea is going to get stolen if I share it with somebody. Well, truth be told, my idea is unique to me and my position in my life and in my goals. It's very rare that someone else is going to copy that idea, because they have a different position and a different life and different goals. And so it's really exciting that we can share our ideas with each other and not have to worry about getting, you know, stolen. So I love that. I love it.
Absolutely. So Kyle, we would definitely have you back on to give us an update and give our listeners an update about, you know, your progress in Shreveport. But before we end the show, we want to go into the Adventurous Four. These are 4 exploratory questions we ask all of our guests. So Kyle, the first question is, where is one place you wish to travel to and why?
So I'm an avid traveler. I was born in Germany, went to high school in Germany, and I love Europe. And so I first want to say something in Europe, but my answer is going to be India. And here's why. Back in 2011, I had the opportunity to travel wherever I wanted, really. And so I always thought India would be very interesting. They have such a diverse culture and diverse landscape. And I just wanted to see it and feel it.
Yeah.
And I learned about a travel visa requirement for India. But at the time, I was on NATO orders because I was about to get stationed in Turkey. And so I was told, hey, you can travel to any NATO country with these here NATO orders and your military ID. So I was like, okay, great. I'm going to go to India. I don't need a visa. I got to India after a long, long flight. It took me from Germany to Istanbul to Mumbai, stepped off the plane in Mumbai. I showed them my NATO orders and my military ID, and they said, what is this? And I said, well, it's NATO orders. I can get into any NATO country. And they said, yeah, we're not part of NATO, dude. So you can't get in. So they put me back on the plane and I got sent back to Istanbul, which ended up being an amazing, amazing experience, because that's a great city in and of itself. So great accident, but I had a little taste of Mumbai and I never actually got to follow through on that. So it's been on my bucket list the past decade to get back to India, but I haven't yet found the time.
Wow.
That's a story. Wow. So then the second question is, what is the number one thing on your bucket list, and how are you leveraging real estate investing to achieve it?
Since I read Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, again, get that book, everyone, please, and read that thing. And my goal has been to be financially free. And what I mean by that is to be able to work or not work, you know, depending on my mood that year, right? Because I have enough passive real estate income to where I can have that choice. And that would be a huge luxury to have the opportunity to have enough cash flow to float my living expenses from month to month, year to year, but also be able to travel and or work as I see fit. And the way I'm leveraging real estate to do that is I'm helping other people try to achieve the same thing. And so whether it's buying your very first home as an owner occupant or buying your very first investment property, I think that by helping other people do that, again, I learn about my own strategy and my own pursuit of financial freedom by trying to help others get there. And so it actually does work. It sounds like some mumbo jumbo, but it really does work in my experience. By helping other people achieve their dreams, I achieve mine. And that's what I love about not only the real estate game, but specifically y'all's podcast. I think it's why you're killing it in this industry already after just starting really recently, is that you guys have that same mentality. And so I think by helping others, we help ourselves. And that's how I'm leveraging real estate.
I love
That's
that.
true. Yeah. And thank you for that.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. The third question, Kyle, is what is one piece of advice for someone who wants to start passively investing in real estate?
So the number one thing I would say is something that I learned 2 years into my real estate investing journey. And that is my mantra: we learn by doing. And that's what I would tell everyone. We learn by doing. And I discovered that when I had a tenant in one of my rentals that unfortunately let the pipes freeze on him, and the pipe burst and just flooded the basement. It was like 3 feet high. And it was a house that I loved immensely and was really emotionally attached to. And so, I told my real estate agent in Colorado about what happened. And he told me, no, man, you're fine. We learn by doing. And at first I thought it was like tough love advice, but then I realized like that mistake and that accident in the rental house was a huge learning opportunity for me. And it was essentially my fault as the guy who was leasing the house for not making sure that there were enough safeguards in place so that it doesn't happen again. And so there was another experience I had that was negative in real estate. And I told myself, well, we learn by doing. And so whether you're doing well in real estate or not, I think we learn by doing. So if you're not where you want to be, why not? And keep doing stuff to figure out how you can get where you want to be. And so I still have to say that to myself with real estate development now. It's like, well, we just burned a month of time of kind of spinning our wheels, but you know what? We learn by doing. And so how can I avoid that scenario playing out in the future?
I love that. Yeah. And just to add on to that, Kyle, it's just, there's a famous quote or whatever. I think I'm not sure who it's by or whatever, but it says like, knowledge is power, right?
Yes.
Like knowledge is not power. It's potential power.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
only power when you put it into action. So yeah, you can sit back and you can get to, what is it called? Analysis paralysis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. When you don't take action, you're not doing things. So it's a very similar situation, right? Like there's so much we've learned so much through asset management that you would never be able to find anywhere in a book anywhere. So yeah.
Absolutely. And no matter how many message boards you read or how many posts you make on various forums, it comes down to, you got to do it. You got to try it and just put your best foot forward. And that's going to be how you succeed eventually, because we learn by doing.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then the fourth and final question is, if you had unlimited resources available to you, how would you leave an impact?
I love this question because to me, it's what we in the military, Mike, I don't know if you ever use this term, but we call it in the military a self-licking ice cream cone. And a self-licking ice cream cone is something that almost begs the question. You try to answer it and then you go back to, wait, what was the prompt again? What's the premise? And so there are two things at play: unlimited resources. What does that even look like? And then if I had unlimited resources, like, what is my highest and best use as a human being on this planet? And so I go around and around when I think about something like that. And what I come to when you mention unlimited resources is that we already have unlimited resources at a certain level, right? We've got the internet, which comprises YouTube and Google and, some message boards and Zoom calls. And so I think that it's really hard to answer that question, because in some form or fashion, even if you had $100 trillion, I don't even know what we would do. But I think what it comes to for me personally is helping everyone achieve freedom, whether financially or like literally having freedom to do what you want and be who you are. And how I achieve that, gosh, I don't even know if it has anything to do with money. I think it's exactly what you guys are doing. It's getting the word out about what you're passionate about so that other people that have similar passions can pursue their dreams. And so that's why I said at the beginning of the podcast, I look up to you guys, and I mean it, because you guys are using the unlimited resources at your disposal to leave the impact that you want to leave, which is, as far as I can tell, helping other people achieve their dreams in the real estate world and elsewhere. So I'm honored to be friends with you guys for that reason.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kyle. That's really cool. Thanks for saying that. Yeah. That's a really great answer too. I never really thought about it that deep. So like, that's really cool that you
did.
Yeah.
So I studied philosophy back at the academy. When I was still at Barksdale, I was living with a couple of guys on the Shreveport economy who had just started their own roofing company. And they both had history degrees from somewhere in Tennessee. And I was like, so how are you guys doing this without like an MBA, having your own business? And they were like, well, when we needed to know how to file tax returns, we Googled it. And when we needed to know how to install solar panels, we YouTubed it. And there's an immense array of information and resources available to us right now that are completely free. And I learned something from that, right? I was like, wow, you're right. Like, we can do anything we want. We've got all the digital information we could possibly imagine at our fingertips. So I'm big on that. And I think everybody should really think of it that way as well.
Yeah, that's cool. I love it. Cool. So Kyle, before we end the show, would you mind sharing with our adventurous family the best way they can get in touch with you?
Sure. Probably the best way is going to be on LinkedIn. And so my name is Kyle Southard. Last name is Southard, like South with ARD at the end. And that's probably the best way, is just through LinkedIn. I think that's how I reconnected with you, Mike. So
yeah.
Perfect.
Absolutely. So yeah, if you reach out and you connect with Kyle, make sure that you say, Kyle, I heard you on the Adventures of Real Estate Investor podcast and all the amazing things you're doing in Shreveport, and I would love to connect, and he will make sure that he accepts that connection.
Absolutely, man. I love collaboration. So
yay. Well then, Kyle, yeah, thank you so much for being here with us. It truly was a pleasure, and I'm so glad that you could share like your journey, just because it is so inspirational to others, because like a downtown in itself is really scary for people, and even opportunity zones. So I'm glad that you showed that it is very, very possible to do everything in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Susie.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Kyle. It was such a pleasure. So until next time, explore more, adventure awaits.
Woo!